This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have a really shocking story here. So there is a pro-Trump election clerk who is charged and incarcerated for her role in a 2021 voting system data breach. She was incarcerated in state prison, and now Donald Trump is trying to do something unprecedented to be able to get her out. Can you explain what the news is here?
Yeah, I wish I could explain the how, but this is the big breaking news that everyone needs to pay attention to. Tina Peters, as you point out, is in a Colorado state prison, having been convicted in Colorado state court. Now, she has become a cause celeb for election deniers, both within the White House and outside, right? She is sort of a national martyr of sorts for people who want to undermine free and fair elections, and particularly people who want to lie about the 2020 elections. And she has real strong support within the administration. And for months, you and I have been watching as the administration has waged sort of low-level warfare, essentially legal warfare against the state of Colorado, trying to get her released. And they've done it through court filings. Donald Trump has suggested something bad might happen to the state of Colorado if they don't release Tina Peters. And now we have, from the team at Democracy Docket, this really disturbing news report that essentially the Trump administration wants her transferred from state custody to federal custody. So in other words, move from the state prison system to the federal prison system. Now, this is, to say the least, highly unusual and irregular, because she's being incarcerated in state custody because she was convicted of a state crime. She has not been charged, as far as I know, with any federal offense. Like, there is no basis for having her incarcerated in federal custody. One is only left to assume that either the Trump administration wants her moved to federal custody so that they could somehow then release her outside of the jurisdiction of Colorado, which would be a blockbuster obstruction of justice by the U.S. government against a lawful state criminal order, or they want to put her in federal custody to give her some improved conditions, which we saw reported around Ghislaine Maxwell, who was in federal custody as part of her conviction related to the Epstein matters, but was in a higher security prison. And then after she miraculously gave an interview with one of Donald Trump's personal lawyers turned a federal prosecutor, saying that Donald Trump had done nothing wrong. She was unaware of Donald Trump ever doing wrong. Now she has improved conditions in a much lower security facility.
As far as you know, is it legal to move someone who has no case, no prosecution, no conviction in the federal court system, to move them from this a state prison into a federal prison?
I mean, you do get these circumstances where there are disputes between state and federal officials as to where someone ought to serve their sentence. Imagine, for example, you have someone who is convicted of federal terrorism charges and also state murder charges.
Right, but this is a situation where you don't have the competing interests. It's only a state prosecution.
Correct. And so under these circumstances, it is highly, highly unusual. I'll be honest with you, I am not familiar with it ever happening. I imagine it might happen in instances where, for example, a state facility is overcrowded and they contract with the federal government to keep someone in custody on behalf of the state. But this is not that. I mean, this is obviously just the latest effort by the Department of Justice to try to strong arm the state of Colorado to essentially give up their punishment of someone convicted in state court. And look, Tina Peters filed a federal habeas petition, which is what you do when you're incarcerated in state prison and you believe your federal constitutional rights have been denied. Of course, that the result of that wouldn't be to be moved to federal prison; it would just be to be released. The federal government, in the form of the Trump administration, has supported that petition, and obviously we've seen Donald Trump suggest that he's going to try to use the pardon power for people like Tina Peters, but of course it doesn't apply to state crimes. So I think that this is just the latest effort by Pam Bondi and the White House to try to put pressure on the state of Colorado to force them to find a way to release her. And I suspect, Brian, unfortunately, as we've seen, this is, Donald Trump is willing to inappropriately and impermissibly use a lot of different pressure points with states, whether it's threatening federal fundings, whether it's sending the US military. Like, we've seen a lot of ways in which Donald Trump tries to apply pressure. And I suspect that this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to see in Colorado.
And in my mind, I'm thinking, even if, in the unlikely event that she was transferred from state prison to federal prison, that he still wouldn't have the jurisdiction to be able to say he's going to pardon her because she was never convicted at the federal level. She was convicted at the state level. But at the same time, I think that I and others have to disabuse ourselves of this notion that Trump can't do something because he shouldn't do something, because there's no legal avenue for him to do it, when in reality we know he's just going to do it. And then if she's in federal prison, who's going to stand there and stop him from making sure that those doors open and that she walks out the front door and is free? So, like our mentality in a lot of this is stuck in this kind of old way of thinking where, oh, Donald Trump can't do something, but then he does it and then it's done. And I think we have to get used to the fact that if he's trying to do that here, there's a very clear reason that he's trying to do it for.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am assuming that, his goal here would either be, if he was able to effectuate this, would either be to release her outright in some state other than Colorado, which shouldn't, and I know you hate when lawyers say shouldn't in the age of Trump, but shouldn't prevent Colorado from then going to that state and having her returned. But, that's option one, I suppose. Option two is he says, you know what, we're going to take you into federal custody and you will spend your incarceration, at the Four Seasons, where we will set up a floor at the Four Seasons as a federal.
It's going to be like that prison in Goodfellas where they're cutting where they're grilling up steaks and cutting the garlic real thin.
I mean, this is just what I'm imagining, because otherwise, this is totally bizarre. But look, we've seen this. I mean, Donald Trump is now pardoning January 6th defendants for the second time. Like, so, these are people who have been pardoned once, and then the courts say, well, we're convicting you or putting you in prison for a crime unrelated to January 6th, and then he pardons them again. So, he is totally willing to abuse the criminal justice system, not just to punish his enemies, right? We focus a lot on the punish the enemies part, but also to just do anything he can to try to prevent the punishment of anyone who has been a supporter of the big lie or election denialism.
And can you talk about that a little bit? Because we have seen now, not only has Trump pardoned those 1,600 insurrectionists, we like to call them the boots of the insurrection, but he's also signed, under the cloak of darkness, the dead of night, just this past week, pardons for everybody who was involved in the law enforcement aspect of perpetuating the big lie, the Jenna Ellises and all of those other people who were involved at the DOJ or the federal government level. And those are the suits of the insurrection. And so can you talk about what this does, what message this sends when you have all of the people who stormed the Capitol, all of the people who created the environment where those people could storm the Capitol, all of those people get a get out of jail free card. And look, we've got another election coming up in 2026 and 2028. And so what does it say that now this is the message being sent ahead of those upcoming elections?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the pardons you're referring to, the second bunch, are symbolic, right? I mean, he's pardoning people for state offenses. The fake electors scandals, for example, are state offenses, and federal pardons don't apply there. And he's doing it, and Ed Martin, I think, is the one who actually posted that, I think, on social media, where he said, leave no MAGA behind. Like, they're doing it to send a clear signal to the Tina Peters of the world that essentially, as long as Donald Trump is in office, he will move heaven and earth. He will do everything he can to reward them for their election denialism, for their loyalty. And that means that no matter what crime they have committed, no matter what jurisdiction they committed it in, if they are loyal to Donald Trump, he will try to pardon them. He'll try to spring them out of prison if they're in state prison. He'll do everything he can. He'll punish states if they pursue election deniers. He will intimidate people like Tish James who have brought charges. That all of these things will be in service of these MAGA extremists who, in many cases had convictions that were pardoned. In some cases, like I said, he's proactively doing it, but he will do everything he can to protect them. And the message it sends going into 2026 is that if you are willing to subvert an election for Donald Trump, if you are willing to engage in violence to try to overturn the results of an election for Donald Trump, if you are willing to tamper with election results to benefit Donald Trump, like as long as it is in favor of him and his cause, Donald Trump will be there for you. Like no matter what you do, Donald Trump will be there with a pardon, with prosecutorial discretion, with going after your own political enemies, going after people who are bringing you to account to justice at the state level. He'll fire federal prosecutors who may have prosecuted you. He will fire FBI agents who may have investigated you. Like that is the message he wants to send. And I'll tell you, for those of us on the front lines of the fight for democracy in 2026, this is a daunting thing. I mean, we have the Department of Justice already going after his political enemies. We've got the Department of Justice being used to attack voting rights and make it harder to vote. We've got a Republican voter suppression, election subversion war machine that is funded by billionaires that is in court every single day. I see more lawsuits being filed by them. And against that, we are trying to do everything we can to also be in court to protect free and fair elections, to also be combating the map rigging efforts that Republicans are doing. My law firm, we're in 12 cases involving redistricting alone. We have more than 60 cases all told involving voting. And we're doing that at the same time that, as we recorded this video, Donald Trump's posting on social media a post that says Obama's Russia hoax treason club with me, a picture of me and my name right in the middle of it, along with James Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Hill, you get the Hillary Clinton, you get the drill. So we're dealing with all this stuff. And on their side, Donald Trump is just turbocharging them.
It's worth asking here. We'll finish off with this. In terms of the plenary nature of the pardon power, does there need to be some reforms to the pardon power, and how would that even go about, recognizing that the Constitution says that any president can pardon anybody for any reason?
Yeah, so we need a lot of reforms, and these reforms are not going to come easy, and they're not going to come quick. And anyone who thinks that if Democrats take control of Congress and Democrats win the White House in 2028, that come 2029, everything is going to snap back. That we'll be back in the days of Obama or Biden. That's not going to happen. Like the damage that Donald Trump has done to our justice system, to our Constitution, to the rule of law is going to be enduring. And it's going to take years, if not a decade or more, for it to be fully repaired. And when it's repaired, it's not going to look like it did before. It's going to have to look different. And one of those things is, Brian, we're going to need to constrain presidents in ways that we have assumed they were constrained by good faith, in the way in which we assume they were constrained by sense of honor and decency. Right. And it's going to look very different. So, I think we're going to need grand jury reform. We cannot have a system on which we joke that a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich, and therefore we're trusting the nonpartisan nature of the prosecutors to be the check. We can't do that anymore. We need to make the grand juries a real check. You mentioned pardon power reform. That's going to require changing the Constitution. But if ever there was something to change the Constitution for, this would be high on the list. We cannot have the president dispensing executive clemency, as it's called, to protect his enforcers against his opponents and against democracy. So there's going to have to be a lot of reforms. It's something I focus a lot of my time and attention on at Democracy Docket. I write about this. I speak about it. It's one of the reasons why you and I do so many videos on these topics. And I want to take this opportunity right now to ask everyone to subscribe to this channel. There's a button right in front of you. You hit that button and hit the bell to make sure you are kept informed when there is new content, because it's the best way to know what's happening to democracy in court.
Well, I appreciate that. And I would also highly recommend for anybody who has not yet signed up for Democracy Docket to be able to read about the reforms that are needed, as well as anything else going on in the voting rights world, the legal world. This is the newsletter. This is the site to subscribe to. So I'm going to put the link to Democracy Docket right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Help support Mark's work, not just in the media ecosystem where we desperately need to elevate voices like his, but also in the front lines where he's fighting in the courts where it matters most right now. So again, that link is on the screen and also in the post description. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.